3, 2, 1. Blast off. I mean, thank you for listening to another episode of...
What do UFOs do? Do they blast off?
They go...
And welcome.
And welcome to Remake Rewind. This is Mike, as always. I've got my buddy Alex. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to be talking about. This episode's a little bit different. Generally, we cover remakes and reboots and whether or not the remake or reboot should have happened. But this isn't really a true reboot. But, you know, there's a lot of similarities, and I think that really kind of works as a thematic kind of conversation. So we're going to be talking about George Romero's Land of the Dead and Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. And the reason that they kind of make sense is they're both, you know, people who took a long gap, 15, 20 plus years before coming back and making a zombie movie, which is what they were, famous for.
I also feel like anything that says of the dead is worth talking about with something else that says of the dead. Like, it's like anything that says once upon a time and blah, blah, blah. Like, you're making yourself part of a series of movies that are not necessarily connected, but they also kind of are.
And you're purposely drawing the conclusion and the comparison to the original thing. So,
exactly.
I mean, Land of the Dead.
You're inserting yourself into the conversation like I just did.
Exactly. So you had Land of the Dead, which was kind of the fourth movie in a spiritual series of movies. A lot of people think Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Land of the Dead are all in the same universe, but all four movies were actually made by different studios and different production companies. So nobody actually owns all the rights to all the George Romero movies. So they're not all technically in the same universe, even though there are nods to each other in all four of his movies. So much to the point.
Yeah, I feel like there's standalone movies that look at the same event at different points, but don't reference each other.
Except for the fact that Tom Savini shows up in this one as a zombie, but he's called Machete Zombie versus like Biker Zombie because
I love Tom Savini.
Yeah, he's great. Well, like this movie actually got into some legal trouble because when they did the initial trailer, it actually had footage from all three of the previous of the Dead movies, but George Romero didn't own the rights to any of those movies, so they actually had to take down the trailer and not display it again. So it's a little weird. And then, of course, Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder, he had his big break with Dawn of the Dead in 2004. And now we're, 17 years later, and he comes out with another of the Dead movie. And so we just thought it made a lot of sense to kind of talk about these two filmmakers coming back to kind of what made them famous after a long break. And besides that, there are a lot of other similarities. They both have smarter, more intelligent zombies. There's a little bit of a heist in each one to an extent. So a lot of similarities, and I think we're just going to start talking about it. So I assume before today you've seen Land of the Dead.
Correct.
Yeah, I've seen this movie. This is probably like my fifth time seeing it.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think I've enjoyed it at all. Any of the times I've seen it.
I think I saw it when it first came out for sure. I don't think I saw it in the theater, but I saw it, the year that it came out, whenever it arrived on home video, I think. And,
yeah, so
it was, I think I didn't have a bad impression of it, but I also never revisited it. So
the Dawn of the Dead is probably one of the most important movies in my life, the original one. So like, it was one of the first times, and I'm going to keep this really brief, and people who've listened to the podcast for a long time could go back to our Dawn of the Dead episode and get like the unabridged version of this story. But essentially, when I was young, I was in like first or second grade, me being the oldest kid and my younger siblings, like my brother was only in kindergarten, so it wasn't a big deal if he missed school. But my mom took my younger siblings to some family function, and I had to stay with my dad, and he decided to have like a guys' night, and we rented like scary movies. So it was American Werewolf in London and Dawn of the Dead. Now, Dawn of the Dead is an older movie, and it was all grainy, and in my second grade mind, I looked at grainy films as like documentaries on PBS. So I was like, why does this look like a PBS thing? And my dad told me that Dawn of the Dead was actually a documentary and it actually happened and the zombies were real.
That rules.
So I was traumatized by that movie to the point where for over a year, every night I would stay up later than everybody. I would go and get every spare blanket, pillow, stuffed animal in the house and barricade my bed.
Aww.
And then I would get up earlier than everybody else and put all that shit away because I was embarrassed by it. But the original one traumatized me. So when they announced this movie and George Romero coming back, I was so excited and so disappointed when the movie actually came out. And I feel like I probably watched this movie every 4 or 5 years just to see if it's bad or not. And I know I watched it during the pandemic because at one point it was on Netflix or Hulu or something. So I've watched this in the last year and a half or so. But yeah, it's bad. It's not a good movie.
I don't even think it's a bad movie or not. I mean, I guess I wouldn't go so far as to say it's not a good movie. I definitely don't think it's bad, but I think it came out too late. I just think
or too early. Well,
no, I think too late. I think like, and it's really interesting comparing this to Army of the Dead, because I think Land of the Dead is more, I mean, in Romero's tradition, it's a more cerebral zombie movie, right? It's more of a thinking man's zombie movie.
Yeah, there's definitely themes.
Yeah, there's something going on under the hood of it. But at the same time, in 2005, I think it came out.
This came out 2005, a year after Dawn of the Dead, the remake that Zack Snyder did.
Yeah,
and the only reason this came out was because of that movie, though.
So at that point, we have Dawn of the Dead, we have Shaun of the Dead, 28
Which
Days
Edgar
Later.
Wright and Simon Pegg are in this movie.
I know, I was going to say that later. You stole my thunder. I think by the time this movie comes out, you have all these other zombie movies, and we've already been through, all
and
these
a few Resident Evil movies
and all these Tarantino movies, and like the audience is just like so used to hyper violence, even if it's like slow moving. I feel like this movie, even though it has amazing Greg Nicotero special effects, practical effects, it just feels dull and slow.
I agree.
And I think it's not even the movie's fault. It just is a product of an earlier filmmaking period that doesn't really translate.
The biggest thing, and we'll summarize it in just a second. I think the biggest thing for me is just I like the idea of, George Romero making a zombie movie that's, however long it is after the apocalypse started and people starting to move on. I like the idea and him doing that. But like the survivors in this movie are the stupidest motherfuckers that have ever existed. Like every death in this movie was because of someone just being fucking careless and stupid. And I just don't understand how any of these people survived in this world.
Yeah,
walking around the way they did.
This movie is also a victim of like really bad casting, especially Simon Baker, the lead. It's just like so dull.
Wasted John Leguizamo.
Yeah,
for sure.
I thought he's great in this, but he has nothing to do really.
No, I mean, you give him anything and he's going to elevate the movie. Like if you had anybody other than John Leguizamo as the quote unquote villain, but he's not even really the villain. He's one of the villains.
I liked his character the best out of all of them.
Yeah,
he's the only one that made any sense.
Exactly.
But the movie wants Simon Baker's character, Riley, to be the protagonist.
Riley Denpo.
Yeah, and I was like, it's cool that he cares about all these people and stuff, but he also seems like he seems like a bootlicker.
Yeah, well, but does he actually care about the people? Because he wants to leave. So anyway,
yeah, who knows?
Without further ado, I'll just summarize the movie really quick. So this takes place in, the last survivors of zombie apocalypse. They're living in like a walled off portion of Pittsburgh. The ultra rich are living in a skyscraper that has 6 restaurants and a shopping mall, and then pretty much everybody else is just kind of living out in the streets in tents and in some of the more derelict buildings. But there is a fence and a wall that keeps the zombies out, so they're relatively safe. And then we have Riley, who's
and it's surrounded on 2 sides by rivers. You have Riley, who's kind of the protagonist, and then you have Cholo, which it's kind of a weird name, but okay. Riley and Cholo are kind of like the 2 leads on this. In some description, I've seen them described as mercenaries, but I wouldn't call them mercenaries. But they're basically like supply runners. They leave the town, they go and scavenge and try to find supplies to keep the city thriving. And they're both deciding to retire. Riley wants to leave and go north and just live off the fat of the land. And Cholo has been saving up all his money because he does little side jobs for Kaufman, played by Dennis Hopper, who's kind of the kingpin of everything and runs everything. The King Koopa.
King Koopa, he thinks he's going to be able to live with the ultra rich, and he doesn't get to, so he decides to hold the city ransom, and Kaufman kind of blackmails Riley into staying to stop Cholo. Meanwhile, the zombies are getting smarter. They can use tools, they can organize, they can think, and so they got to deal with that too. And that's the movie in a nutshell. Yeah. That about sums it up. And what happens? What happens in the third act? So, in the third act, the zombies, led by a smart zombie named Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
He kind of figures out how to use tools. He kind of can like bark orders at them by like growling. He eventually gets them to just walk across the bottom of the river and get across to the more limited security. And they basically take over the island at the same time that Cholo is holding them ransom with this giant, weaponized truck called Dead Reckoning. He's going to blow up the tower. So like they basically got to take on bad guys at two fronts, the zombies, and they got to take on John Leguizamo, who has a missile truck. And that's kind of the third act. And then really the hero of the movie and the few people that kind of join him as the movie goes, they're almost not even worth mentioning, that like the kind of the companion characters, because none of them really do anything except for Charlie, who's just kind of Riley's right-hand man, who everyone makes fun of because he's kind of disfigured, but he's a crack shot. But that's all he ever does, is he just kind of like saves people at the last second by shooting right by their heads and scaring the shit out of them right before a zombie pops up. But other than that, none of the characters really matter. And at the end of the movie, they fail to save the city, so they're like, well, fuck it, and they drive off into the sunset.
Well, they managed to save a group of people that they abandoned, who don't have like a president anymore, whatever Dennis Hopper called himself. So they abandon a group of people that are leaderless.
Yeah, but did they really rescue them?
And there's still like definitely zombies out there. I mean, they rescued them in the moment, right? They got them, they opened the gates so that they could get out and find their own way. But there's still a ton of zombies out there.
Well, no, they open the gates. They open the drawbridge, and they're getting ready to open the gates, and they just see all the people who ran out getting consumed, like devoured by the zombies. They're like, well, fuck it. And then they shoot missiles and kill everybody. Like,
no, but then right after that, there's all the like poor people.
Oh, did they get out? Okay.
Yeah, they had a whole conversation. It's like you didn't even watch the movie, actually.
Yeah, you know what? This movie was painful.
You said you've seen it 5 times.
Over the course of 20 years.
So I guess it's worth mentioning, you said that there's the people that live in the skyscraper, and they're all the rich people. This movie's like really about class war, right?
Yeah.
So there's all the people that live
anti-capitalism.
There's all the rich people that live in the skyscraper, and then there's like the street people who live at the bottom and sort of do like service jobs for the skyscraper, I guess. It's not really explained, but they're the ones that end up surviving. But again, they're just sort of let loose on a city that's still infested with zombies. And I guess they have weapons. I guess they do have weapons at the end. But I don't know. Maybe hang out, kill some more of the zombies. Actually, Riley actively says not to kill Big Daddy and some of the other zombies because he's like, they're just looking for a place to go, just like us. And like, I get what the movie's trying to say, but I also feel like they're bloodthirsty maniacs that are going to kill humans. Like, there's no truce.
That's all they want to do.
There's no truce. Yeah.
Like,
and I don't think they're going to differentiate between rich and poor.
No, well, and the thing that's interesting, I guess we should just talk about the themes of this movie. So one of the things that George Romero...
Holy class war Batman.
Is for his zombie movies, there's always some sort of theme. So, Dawn of the Dead is his most famous one, and that one's, very anti-consumerism, where this one is very, very much like anti-capitalism, where like Kaufman, played by Dennis Hopper, multiple times has little like grand speeches where he's like, I paid to build the wall, and I paid to build the city, and I paid
ahead of its time.
Yeah. I still we talked about this with the Mario episode, that he would have made a good Donald Trump in a movie.
Yeah. And I feel like they, it's not on the surface, but it's also what's the word? It's like talky racism as opposed to just like outright vileness. But at the end he ends up calling Cholo a spick. So it's like, oh, okay, that's where it's coming from. Yeah,
well, it's just weird that his name is Cholo, and then he also like Cholo, who John Leguizamo. In this, they don't say what his background is, but he also says he's going to commit a jihad on Kaufman at one point, which I was like,
sort of mixed messages there.
Yeah, well, the thing is to kind of really hammer home this anti-capitalism thing is it comes from really two fronts. So we mentioned there's like the derelict part of town that's just kind of run by the service people and the people who are just managing to get by, and they're only surviving because they're inside, these walls. There's one guy who's really trying to get Riley on his side. He's like, Riley, if you and I like coordinated, we could get everybody. There's more of us. We could go and take the tower and take them down, like the power of the people. So like, that's a very, on the nose thing. But then having The smart zombie was, you know, a black zombie who was a gas station attendant, is the one that becomes smart and leads. So it's all about, you know, the lower class overthrowing the upper class, the upper echelon. So it's like, it's very on the surface. I don't think there's anything really left to think about with it, but I do think it's interesting that, you know, you hit it from the zombie front and the human front, that the service class is going to take over.
Yeah. It was nice to see John Leguizamo and Dennis Hopper back together again.
And you're absolutely right. Like, John Leguizamo is by far the best part of this movie. He's the only one that kind of has an arc. Riley, who's the good guy, kind of lets John Leguizamo go. Like, he totally understands where John Leguizamo's coming from. And he's like, look, man, I can't let you blow up the city, but I'm not going to kill you and I'm not going to turn you in. Like, here's a Jeep with a fuck ton of weapons. Like, go do your thing. And then John Leguizamo just decides to go back in the city so he can kill Dennis Hopper, and then he gets got by a zombie. But then he's like, kind of want to see what it's like to be a zombie. So I thought that was,
and then he doesn't even get the final kill. He like has his hands around Dennis Hopper's throat, and then Dennis Hopper's black butler chauffeur guy runs off, and Big Daddy comes down and sets him on fire.
Yeah, and blows them both up. But you know what? I think it's fitting because John Leguizamo was killing hella zombies, and Big Daddy saw it and was like, I hate John Leguizamo.
Well, he didn't know he was him. Yeah, I mean, he didn't know he was down there, but I guess it's
just
poetically kind of nice. Jinx.
So the only other thing that I kind of want to talk about is just like the stupidity of the survivors in this movie. So pretty much every time we saw somebody get bitten by a zombie, until the horde like overruns the city, it's all just from like negligence on the part of the person who got bitten.
The first guy that gets bit is the kid that's sort of shadowing John Leguizamo on this like run into town. And he gets bit because John Leguizamo tells him to, what's his name in Spawn? I'm going to start calling him the Violator or something.
The clown?
The clown. But he turns into the Violator, right?
Yeah, at the end.
So the Violator tells him to like pick up something off the ground, and the kid just like
cigars.
Reaches around a blind corner and he gets bit.
They're in like a liquor store, and he reaches over the counter.
I just feel like if you've been in a zombie apocalypse for, like, speaking as someone who's been in pandemic for a year, I think if you've only known zombie apocalypse as your reality, you would not reach around a blind corner.
No, not at all. Especially when just like minutes prior, a zombie burst out of a freezer and tackled John Leguizamo. Like, you know there's zombies in this building, and you drove through the town. There's literally thousands of zombies that you've seen as you're driving through.
Yeah. This is the kind of shit that makes this movie feel dated. Like, that would have been fine in the 70s or the 80s, but I feel like audiences in the 90s and 2000s are like, why would he do that?
And I mentioned Charlie, who's, you know, the kind of the sidekick to Riley. 2 different times in the movie, he shoots right past somebody's head as a zombie pops up right next to them, like where people just aren't paying attention and zombies come up to you. So he saves Slack, who's like the prostitute that they save, and then he does it with like one of the soldiers too. And then there's another kid who's kind of like a protege to Cholo. When he's having his little ransom, he's like, all right, I'm going to leave you on this island. Like, you should be safe. They're going to drop off the money, and you radio me when the money gets here. And he puts on headphones, and he's just skateboarding around, and he sees like a silhouette.
The headphones.
Yeah, it makes no sense, but he sees like a silhouette, and he just unloads an entire clip.
And he's on a skateboard.
Yeah.
Like, he literally, he sees a silhouette. Maybe this is a different moment, but at some point he sees something in a window and gets on his skateboard and goes across the floor to check out the window. And then something jumps out and scares him, and he goes backwards on his skateboard into more zombies.
It is the same scene. So he doesn't realize the zombies are behind him because he has his headphones. So he sees the silhouette, blows out the window, unloads an entire clip, and it was just the shadow elevated because it was a little kid zombie. So like, he didn't hit it. So as he goes to inspect it, a little kid zombie pops up, and he's like, surprise, I'm a kid zombie. And then, yeah, the machine gun fire like pushes him backwards into the zombies, and then he gets eaten. It's stupid. And then there's a soldier guy who's with Riley towards the end, where they're like, okay, we're going to go after Cholo, but let's go stop and get some ammo first. And they go in, and there's like a ton of zombies. And he's about to just start firing his machine gun. And Riley's like, hey, wait a second, idiot. This is the armory. You're going to blow us all up. But there's like 30 zombies in there chowing down. And then they're like, oh, this is bad. Let's get out of here. And so they walk back to a car slowly, and then a priest zombie who looks headless like sticks his hand up on the soldier guy, and the soldier guy looks up, and then the headless zombie like flips his head up and then like bites him. Like nobody reacts. They just like watch this happen.
Yeah.
And then even our protagonist Riley, towards the end of the movie, when he's trying to save the day and he's trying to get the drawbridge down, he goes into like the control booth, and his crew is like in the machine gun truck, not paying attention to him, and like he's just like pulling the lever, and then a zombie just like jumps out at him, and he just like happened to turn and just barely didn't get bit by the zombie. It just doesn't make any sense. Like all these people are careless, and then John Leguizamo's just walking in a forest and gets bitten. Like
there's a moment before that where it looks like his partner, because he like when he leaves, he goes off with his best friend or whatever, and the guy looks like he abandons John Leguizamo. Like he runs out of a shot kind of mysteriously.
Yeah.
And then John Leguizamo gets the Violator gets bit. And I expected the next moment to be like, "Hey man, where did you go? I could have used your help." But but he's like very nice. He's like, "I'll stay with you, or I'll kill you if you don't want to turn, or I'll stay with you while you do, or something."
Yeah, it's super weird, but this is like John Leguizamo is like the survivor, and he's kind of like the Daryl Dixon of this movie, before Daryl Dixon even exists, where he's got like the little weird crossbow gun that shoots the darts and everything, and he's the scrappiest guy and the one who's been out on the most missions and does like the dirty jobs of like disposing bodies that Dennis Hopper's character had killed and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you would think he's like the most ruthless, most survivable kind of person, and he just like in a silent night, he doesn't hear a zombie walking in the forest.
Yeah, and I think some movies do that moment, like the most prepared person gets caught off guard by something stupid, and it's like an ironic twist. But that's not what this moment was. It was just like, and then this thing happened, and he's dead now.
Yeah, and then you have like, I guess the zombies, they're smarter. Like you have like the chef zombie that Big Daddy teaches how to swing the cleaver around. So like, there's a point where like the chef zombie like cuts off a hand of a soldier who has a grenade, and then the soldier falls on his own grenade and blows up. Like that's like the caliber of movie we get once everything kind of just goes. And
that's
I don't know.
But like even that is kind of just like, oh, that's fun. That's
and that's kind of the stuff he did in like Dawn of the Dead, where he had like the one guy who like is getting his blood pressure taken, and he's like swinging a machete around trying to like kill zombies as he's getting his blood pressure taken. But it's like a lot of that kind of stuff.
I think that this movie tried to be gritty in the way that 2000s movies started, 2000s like mainstream action movies started being, but it was still being directed by George Romero, who like has these like campy elements that work very well in the earlier of the Dead movies.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid.
Doesn't translate to. I was just kind of thinking, apropos of anything else, I feel like after Walking Dead, we've kind of exhausted this type of zombie movie, right?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
And that's not a knock or a pat on the back to Walking Dead. I just think like, what else is there to do? We've had a 10-year TV show of these incredibly practical effects made zombies by, again, Greg Nicotero is like the best at this.
Yeah.
It's gone on forever. I think we've sort of mined all the social commentary.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe in that way there is space for something like Army of the Dead to exist now. But
and without further, I don't have anything else to talk about on this movie. There's just a lot of silly things on here, and like I mentioned, there are a bunch more characters in here, but they're just there to be cannon fodder. And same thing, like 2 of the 3 soldiers that were sent to help him die because they're not paying attention. Like zombies just walk up behind them and get them. Yeah. Like nobody keeps their head on a swivel. Everybody who died in this movie deserved to die. And
nobody in this movie seems to care about ammunition, by the way. They're all just
everybody's just unloading clips.
Even the zombies. I mean, of course they don't understand, but the movie is sort of setting up that they would figure out how to reload a gun, and I don't think that a zombie would have any concept of that.
No, they just see guns and they keep picking them up, like they recognize when they run out. So like I appreciated that stuff, but it was also like, and this comes. We'll talk about it more in the newer one with Army of the Dead. But what kind of drove me crazy about this one is like they've been presumably doing this for years and they've never seen anything like this. And then it just happens so fast. Like the zombies are just like, oh, they see the light in the tower. Like we're just going to go there. and it just all intersects at the same time. Like, it's just very convenient timing that zombies got smart at the same time that
Yeah.
Cholos
Again, I think this is
doing a
stuff that you
siege.
forgive in a campy movie.
Yeah.
And when it starts like feeling like it's taking itself too seriously and you start asking more questions, it's like, it's a little convenient.
And I have a lot to say on that exact front when we get to Army of the Dead, because there's some things that don't hold up to scrutiny in that film. But before we get to
You
that
don't
one,
say.
what have you been up to, bud?
Well, I always forget what TV shows I'm watching. So this week I actually wrote down some of the TV shows I've been getting into. We talked about Jupiter's Legacy, right?
Briefly, I had not finished it, but I did finish it since we briefly discussed it. And you were right, it got worse as it went.
Yeah, it's crazy. They really, the one thing to that show's credit I'll say is that they do a good job of hooking you in the first episode. Not even that it's going to be great, just that there will be enough there to justify finishing the series or the season.
Yep.
And there's just not. It is.
I only finished it
brutal.
because I went out of town and I was on an airplane, so I watched that while I was on the airplane.
Yeah, it was
That's
rough,
it.
man. Other TV shows, I started MODOK.
I finished MODOK.
I couldn't get through the first episode.
The first episode's the worst. It does get better. I wouldn't say it's good, but I'd say each episode has at least one really solid joke that makes it worth it. But I just went back to the gym starting on Friday. So, while I was doing cardio, that's what I was watching was MODOK.
Nice.
So, I just watched 2 episodes on the elliptical.
I was planning on giving it another shot, but that makes me feel better. I'm rewatching Cobra Kai with Scarlett. I convinced her to watch it. And I basically just finished it too, and then immediately started it again. Watched the new Mythic Quest, which is great.
Me too. I'm not a big fan of that show.
I love it, man.
I think that's a show that I would like if it was just they dropped them all and I binge it, but like it's not something I care about watching week to week.
No, weirdly I agree. I think that for whatever reason that show's more fun to binge. Week to week I'm less interested, but when I've binged the first season twice, and had a lot of fun with it. Started watching American Horror Story Freak Show. I left off on Coven. I never got into Freak Show, but giving it a shot now, and it's pretty cool.
We've only watched the first season.
Yeah, I had a big problem with Coven, and Freak Show is pretty good, but I'm looking forward to the next few seasons. I think the last couple seasons I've heard are not good, but I'm also kind of interested just to see how they handle the election and stuff. So looking forward to finishing that. Started watching Ash vs. Evil Dead finally.
That's so good. I've seen the first 2 seasons. I need to get back into it.
I'm still like halfway through the first season, but pretty fun. And then I've been watching Freaks and Geeks a little bit as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
and then movie wise, I've just watched Popstar and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and then the Of the Dead movies.
Nice. I had a lot of time because I took a little vacation and went and visited my buddy up in San Francisco, and all we did was ate and drank and watched movies. So nice. I watched a fuck ton of shit this time around. So
that's funny because I was the opposite. I was in the desert for a wedding for a week, and I did not watch shit.
Yeah. So I watched. We finished Modern Family, which was. It's a fantastic show. I almost want to start it over again. It's like that good. I really enjoyed watching that. I already mentioned MODOK. If that was a show that was coming out week to week, I would give up on it. But the fact that they were all available, it was easy to kind of keep trucking. And there's some charm to it. There's some legitimate gems in some of those episodes. So I think it was worth watching as a whole. But yeah, I agree with you. If you had to watch it one episode at a time, it would be bad. That's pretty much all I watched from like TV shows, but I watched a bunch of different movies. I watched Deuce Bigalow. My friend forced me to watch that, and it's problematic, but it is actually really fucking funny. Rob
Schneider sucks, man.
I agree. I generally don't like him, but there were some really good one-liners in that movie, and I did laugh quite a bit. I watched because Eddie Griffin is in that movie, and Eddie Griffin is an AMC ape. He had like a little rant video like the same day we watched that movie, so we ended up watching The New Guy as well, which is another really stupid movie with DJ Qualls, but it's fun. Mm-hmm. We already talked about it, but I finished Jupiter's Legacy. We watched The Rock, Isle of Dogs, Iron Man, Kong Skull Island, and there was another movie. Oh, and I went and visited another friend, and while we ate lunch, we watched the second half of Endgame. So I got to see like the big battle thing. So I had a lot of shit that I watched this last week.
All over the place. Did you like Isle of Dogs? I haven't seen it yet.
It's good. It's from a Wes Anderson point, it's definitely a Wes Anderson film. It's not my favorite, but it is entertaining and fun. Like, it's definitely worth watching. But I do prefer his like live action movies better than his stop motion ones.
I mean, I love his live action movies, but Fantastic Mr. Fox is like one of my all timers.
It's a great movie, but if I'm gonna watch any of his movies, it's gonna be The Life Aquatic or the Grand Budapest Hotel.
I've been meaning to rewatch Grand Budapest. That movie's fantastic.
So but yeah,
all right.
That's all I watched. I'm thinking we should change the name to that segment because I just got on Letterboxd and I'm MDXpods Mike on there, and maybe we should just change the segment to like Letterboxd or some shit like that. Yeah. I don't know.
What's in your letterbox, bud?
But so Army of the Dead, summarize this bitch for me.
I was gonna say maybe we can get a sweet little endorsement from Letterboxd if we change the name.
Cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, we should do that.
Yeah,
I'll reach out. Hey, Letterboxd.
Let's Twitter. Let us know. Let's tweets them.
Let's Twitters them. Let's go.
Army of the Dead. All right. So. U.S. military convoy hauling confidential cargo from Area 51 collides with a car, releasing a genetically engineered zombie, which makes its way to Las Vegas and proceeds to infect the entire town. What seems to be years later, not really clear, right?
Super unclear. They do say the word years at some point.
So years later, a casino owner convinces Drax the Destroyer to break into the walled-off city of Las Vegas before it's nuked from orbit and steal back his own money. Drax puts together a team and they make their way into the casino with his estranged daughter in tow. It turns out the casino owner has an ulterior motive and sends one of his men along with the group to collect the head of a super zombie that he intends to sell to the U.S. military for reasons unexplained, and he sabotages the rest of the team, leading to some of their deaths. The rest of the deaths are caused by the estranged daughter trying to save a complete stranger. Drax and his daughter make it out before the nuke, but he's been bitten and he gives her a little cash and she kills him, and another member of the team survives by being locked in the vault that they broke into. He walks through a fallout with an open wound, buys a plane, and apparently can't kill himself before succumbing to a bite and brings a zombie plague to Mexico. And I say apparently he can't do it because the movie closes with him looking in the mirror and going, "Aw, shit."
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what happened.
So you and I watched this movie differently. So I watched it in a theater, and you watched it on the Netflix. And so I think that drastically is going to change our opinion of it, because you were watching it and texting me telling me how much you hated it fairly early in, where I watched it.
To be fair, I texted you, I hate the first 5-7 minutes of this movie before the credits. It's fucking stupid. It picked up a little bit after that, but the first like 50 minutes are very slow. But I was texting you during the first like 15 minutes.
Yeah. And I was like, buckle in, motherfucker.
This movie is 2.5 hours long compared to Land of the Dead, which was a solid 90 minutes.
Yeah. Like with credits and everything, it was an hour and 38 minutes.
Yeah.
So, well, it's funny. So I watched this in theaters and there was 9 trailers on this movie. This movie had a very limited release. It was only in Cinemark. So it only made like $780,000. And this movie cost $70 million. So they're really banking.
I don't believe that, by the way. 70.
When I went and saw it, oh no, I'd say that, because I mean nobody on this movie is really an A-lister, and Batista's the biggest name, and he's not going to.
There's a lot of special effects in this movie, and they had to reshoot Tig Notaro for everything.
That's true.
Wherever you saw that 70 million figure, like they routinely put out lower numbers online.
Oh, they definitely do.
The marketing for this movie is insane. So whatever the budget was, you can at least double it for the marketing.
Yeah, but the marketing was almost exclusively online.
I've seen marketing out in the world.
Oh, I haven't seen anything out and about, but and I'm sure it's only really in Los Angeles they're doing it. But like Netflix also, they can pay people a lot less, because the way that SAG contracts are, they're not recognized as like a normal producer. They're not part of the producer guild, so they're not actually they don't have to follow the same laws that they have, or not. I don't want to say laws. They're not laws. They don't have to follow the same labor agreements with actors that any other SAG project has to do. Right. So they can definitely cut costs on that front, and that's a big issue that SAG's been trying to figure out the last few years, actually.
At the risk of getting too inside baseball.
Yeah.
I think it looks like 90 to 100 to me, but
who knows? Yeah. I mean, honestly, who knows? What's weird about this movie, and just to say it up front, is they are really banking on people liking this because they tease a fuck ton of shit in this movie that is not explained, it doesn't pay off, and they're going to be doing 2 prequel series. So they're going to do a prequel series with the Safecracker, and they're going to be doing an animated prequel series about like the actual initial infestation and the initial like adventures of this crew, and why they were sought out to come back to get the money.
Yeah, and I think that they probably have more stuff planned that they just haven't announced yet. From what I understand, this is meant to be like Netflix's marquee franchise.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to try to milk this for all that it's worth.
And for what it's worth, so like there's certain things like I'm sure we're going to talk about Zack Snyder a bunch during this little conversation, but you got to give him credit. He loves making movies. He absolutely loves making movies. The only thing he likes more than making movies is spoiling his own movies, and he's done it for years. I mean, when he was still the director of the DC movies, he was sending images and stuff of things that weren't even in trailers, and then even after he got his Snyder cut and he was making that, he was like releasing everything. Like there wasn't anything that was a surprise in the Snyder cut. Like he basically gave us the plot breakdown for all 3 of his movies that he wanted to do for Justice League. And in this movie, we'll talk about it, he brought up a full month before this movie drops, he started talking about the robots and the UFOs and whatnot before anybody's even seen this movie.
Yeah, which we'll get into it later, but I think the only thing lamer than having the robot zombies in the movie is talking about them a month ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think it would have been much more interesting if they were just not addressed at all.
Don't address it and let eagle-eyed fans go like, what the fuck was with those blue sparks and the blue goo? And then be like, sequel, question mark?
I think that, and we'll get back to the movie, but just talk about Zack Snyder for a second. I don't know that he loves making movies. I think he loves the process of making his movies. But I feel like his movies, and now we have his version of Justice League and Batman v Superman. We have a solid filmography from this guy, and I think that he does not care about making characters that resonate emotionally with audiences. I think that he wants the appearance of that, and I think he wants to do like big crazy action scenes, which he's pretty fantastic at. And he wants to do shit that looks cool, and he wants to drop Easter eggs. And I mean, I'm being kind of snarky, but to like say something more favorable, I think he's interested in building worlds.
Right.
I don't know that he is as good at it as he thinks he is, or that people make him out to be, but that's clearly what he's into doing.
He's like George Lucas, but he just hasn't found the right producer.
I don't even know if that's true. He created a full, DC universe that I think sucks, but is also his vision, and he clearly has thought about it,
Right.
And I think he's tried to create a universe here with Army of the Dead, with robot zombies and the UFOs. Like there's so many questions that I'm sure he's willing to talk about. But at the end of the day, I don't know. When you say he loves making movies, I think he and I have a different definition of what a movie entails.
I think that's fair, but I mean, he generally likes putting things on film or on camera and shooting them and doing these things. Like he loves talking about it. And I was like, Katrina and I were talking about this movie.
Sorry, I would interrupt one more time. I think that he loves making movies, but like, I think that what a movie boils down to is a story. And I don't know that he loves actually telling a story.
I think he does. I just don't think he knows how to do it correctly. Like there are a lot of things that I like doing that I don't necessarily know how to do correctly. Like I have a bow and arrow, I have an archery set that I love to use. Am I good enough to hit a target pretty much every time? Yeah, but am I doing it correctly? No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with you there. I think we end up at the same place.
Yeah. So Katrina and I were talking about him a little bit because I was talking about this movie, and then we were talking about Sucker Punch, which I actually really like Sucker Punch, and that's another movie that he has a director's cut version of. So there's the theatrical and the Snyder cut of Sucker Punch, and I like both versions of the movie. I actually prefer the theatrical one, but Katrina was like, yeah, one of her friends is going to be working on a commercial. He's doing some sort of commercial, and her friend is going to be on it, and Zack Snyder's directing it. And she's like, I don't know, is he a good person to work with? And I started like looking up things, and it turns out like with Sucker Punch, like Jenna Malone was going to retire from acting, and like working with him like got her into it again. And she's like, so like everybody loves working with him. DC, like all the
I've heard
directors,
nothing but good things.
yeah, all the directors were like, we support Zack Snyder. We would totally restore the Snyder cut.
And he's like, I watched an interview with him today. I watched a handful of interviews with him, and he's like, he's excited about whatever he's doing, and it's like infectious. And he seems like he's genuinely a good guy. So yeah, I think in that sense he loves doing it. But I don't know, man. Every single movie, I just have a hard time connecting with, like resonating with any of the characters. Like
I think that's totally fair.
Don't care about them. I don't care about their story. Their choices mystify me. And like, maybe this is the right place to get into this, but one of my notes was, I think that like Zack Snyder, at least in this movie, and I think it kind of happens in his other movies, he like kind of hates women. I don't think that I mean, obviously he wouldn't say that. But like every bad thing that happens in this movie is a woman's fault. You know, the crash into the Area 51 vehicle, releasing the zombie, is caused by a woman like giving her new husband a blowjob. But she's like,
this movie starts with Roadhead.
Yeah, and like she's very, I don't know how to describe it, but the woman in the movie is like pushes herself on the guy. You know what I mean? Like she's very forward about doing this thing, and the guy's kind of like, oh, I don't know, okay, I guess. No,
he was totally into it.
I mean, he was into it, but he wasn't like trying to convince her.
He wasn't asking for it, but
it was her idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, oh, wow. Okay. You know, the daughter is responsible for half of the deaths in this movie. She goes into like,
I wouldn't say that that's fair. I don't think she's technically responsible for half the deaths because those zombies would have been getting it anyway.
I think that
I think she's responsible for her father, Tig Notaro.
I think
death, that's it.
I think she runs back into the city with no plan to get out.
That's totally fair, but all those other people died independent of her.
And also the woman that she's going in to save, like we don't have any explanation really why she had to get back into the city, right? She's just like a woman doing something crazy.
Well,
it's how I felt the movie painted.
No, she was like, they were friends in the camp. So one of the things,
yeah, but that's not why she went back into the city. I don't care that they were friends.
Well, no, she went back into the city because the camp. So, and this movie has some very, I guess we can talk about symbolism really quickly. I'm
not done with women hating things.
Right. But just to kind of, since you're bringing some stuff up, so some little background, like this movie has some very, very, like Sean Spicer is in this movie as like the press secretary again. But this movie has some very heavy handed things. Like they have Hispanic people in essentially an internment camp right outside of the quarantine zone, and they're like, if these people were white, they wouldn't be there. They're just keeping them there because they're brown people. So like this has that very heavy-handed on that as well. But she goes in specifically with a coyote. Like one of the characters' name is Coyote because she gets them across borders. They're building a wall, blah, blah, blah. But she goes in there specifically to rob a casino and get money and come back so she can buy her and her kids freedom. And like that family was like the daughter was kind of like babysitting those kids, so she had a personal connection. So I wouldn't say that it was like.
I'm not saying that she didn't have a personal connection. I'm just saying that's like in the context of this movie with all of the other shit going on. They chose to just have this woman run back into the city. And
you had to get the daughter involved in the story.
Okay, so they made decisions. They had the women do dumb things because the movie had to happen. You're not disproving my point. I don't know. And there's the queen. These are like, I know I'm making like small points, but I'm trying to I'm trying to say
platform, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to say how many there are. It's not each one under a microscope. It's the blowjob, it's the daughter, it's the woman that the daughter ran after, it's the queen to Zeus being painted as like this other, like she's moving around like an animal and stuff, even though like Zeus can like talk and is smart and blah blah blah. It's the Vasquez knockoff Chambers, Vasquez from Aliens.
Right.
Chambers like not having the wherewithal to tell Mikey, hey, this guy's trying to fuck us. It's not saving her in the first place, where there was like clearly an opportunity for Mikey and the rest of the team to go save this woman, but they just watched her die instead. It's the opening credits where we spend all this time, we spend 7 minutes of opening credits with Batista and Vanderho, who are the stars of the movie, and then this random soccer mom who rescues her daughter only to have the daughter run back to her and the woman to like
I thought
hug
that
her.
was his family initially until like his daughter shows up. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
why was this such a big thing?
More incoherent filmmaking. But we spend all this time with this woman, like finding her daughter and then getting her, you know, to the edge of town before the final container drops down. And I just watched an interview with him talking about it. He's like, yeah, you know, I wanted to subvert people's expectations. Like, you thought there was going to be a good ending to that story, but then the woman and the daughter get killed. And it's like, oh, that's the kind of movie that you're into. And I was like, okay, but it also feels like you had these two women make stupid fucking choices and then you killed them just to be grim.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, but I do disagree with a couple of your points, but I think this is a good conversation because I do think some of these things, like the queen zombie, I didn't see her as being animalistic. Saw her as being like an equal because she was the one that kind of facilitated the trade. So these zombies are smarter. They have a hierarchy. They can take orders. The main zombie even like makes a helmet so he's bulletproof. But she's the one who kind of works with the coyote and like facilitates, hey, you give me one person and like you guys can go and off into the city and do your thing. So I didn't look at her as an issue. And I also think, you know, when I think Zack Snyder, and this could be problematic on its own, you know, maybe Zack Snyder thinking because he gave so many, there are a lot of women in this movie. A lot of the crew are women. It's almost a 50-50 split. And then, you know, replacing Chris D'Elia with Tig Notaro, like, you know, that could be a little bit of like patting himself on the back, being like, look how woke I am. Maybe. Like, I don't know. But I don't think that I didn't see it as him hating women. Now, at the beginning, you definitely make some good points. Like, a lot of women made some bad decisions in this, but I think
hating is a
everybody
strong word, but, you know, casual misogyny, maybe.
I think that's fair. But, I definitely don't think it was overt, and he didn't mean to. And I think he was maybe even thinking he's treating them like equals by giving them as much
mean that he is.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
What do we think about Tig, since you brought her up?
It's definitely noticeable that she was brought in after the fact. Because I'd say 99% of the time you see Tig Notaro on the screen, she's by herself. If you do see her on the screen with somebody else, there's some sort of, you know, out of focus part of it that kind of blurs the screen. You really only see her with the team like 2 or 3 times, and it's very obvious that she was like CG'd behind the crew.
There's one shot that I just saw when I was watching my little reviews online that I didn't notice in the movie, but when I watched it again online, when they first enter the city, and it's like a wide shot, and she's sort of half prone. She's like crouching, and she's like very clearly just cut out and pasted in there.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. Like there's another scene when they like get into like one of the rooms, like buildings where they kind of like hunker down for a minute while they like strategize the next part of the plan, and she's behind. I think his name is Miguel, the YouTuber guy.
Yeah, I think Mikey.
Yeah, Raul
Guzman.
Like that Katrina actually knows that actor. He was on Looking, and she worked on that show.
I like him.
Yeah, he's good in a lot of things. He was just in something else we watched. He was in that movie with Jason Statham that I just watched,
Wrath of Man.
Wrath of Man. So I've seen him in a couple things lately, which is pretty cool. But there's a scene where she's like right behind him, and it's like very obvious that she's cut into that scene. And then it's like super blurry on either side of the image, and you see like her, him, and like another person. And it's just like, it's a little odd.
I don't think we need to get into the camera or the lens choice, but that lens is so fucking annoying, man.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird focal issues.
It's the same lens that he used for the one scene that he reshot at the end of Justice League with the Joker, which I think a lot of people complained about. Like, why is this scene with the Joker so like shallow depth of field? And I guess that's also like a one-of-a-kind lens that he actually borrowed from Chris Nolan.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's Nolan's lens.
Oh, okay.
And, or maybe it's like WB's lens, but Nolan had it for Tenet, and then Zack Snyder got it to reshoot the Justice League stuff. And I guess he also had it for Army of the Dead.
Yeah, and this was the first movie that he did that was all digital.
Yeah, he shot it himself too. He was a cinematographer.
Yeah, he was a cinematographer. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's interesting that he tried that, but
probably saved him a lot of money.
Yeah. So just
there's a nice Easter egg to his previous cinematographer, Larry Fong. Did you notice that?
No.
On the side of one of the buildings in Las Vegas, there's like an ad for a magician and it's the magician is Larry Fong, and so there's like
Oh.
a picture of him, and it says like Fong is magic or something, and he's
That's
got a deck
funny.
of cards, and I guess he's
for
like
him.
an avid magician too. So I thought that was
Oh, cool.
good
So-
Easter egg.
Just to kind of like hit a few things, because like this plot isn't overly complicated, but like just to it's
But a lot
weird.
of things happen.
It's a really weird movie. So it opens up with this like the opening with like the soldiers, like they don't know what they're hauling, and then you mentioned the newlyweds who are getting roadhead and
The
cause-
worst soldiers ever.
yeah, they crash and like the zombie gets out. The acting is atrocious at the beginning of it. It's super corny. And then you go into like basically mimicking Zombieland, the opening credits to Zombieland, which is like slow motion, funny zombie kills and stuff. But then it also has like little bits of like Suicide Squad, but not as interesting. Like in the midst of the carnage, you'll have like Batista will stop and he holds up like Modern Family. He holds up like a framed photo of him and his family, and then it goes to the next character who's out there. And same thing, they hold up a framed photo like they're trying to be like Suicide Squad. And so there's all these like weird. And there's all these weird funny deaths, like a guy who like skydives and he lands in a horde of zombies, and then there's like somebody uses a machine gun and like zombies just explode into a million pieces, and you see like stripper zombies, and like there's a lot of fun little funny deaths, and then there are moments that are really somber and serious, and it just like yo-yos between like ridiculous over the top nonsense and then trying to be serious, and like tonally it just doesn't really.
I wouldn't even use the word serious. I'd say like this is the fucking grimdark shit that people were complaining about with Man of Steel and Batman.
Yeah,
It's
it
just
gets
like-
to those moments.
It's just
But
like
then there's-
angsty and dark for no reason.
And what's weird
not
is
to
like
say anything.
the trailers, like pretty much everything we saw in the trailer was in the first 10-15 minutes of the movie.
And sorry, just talking about the grimdark thing. I feel like if your point is to say that life is pointless and nothing really matters and blah blah blah, if that's what you're going for and you want to kill everybody at the end of the movie, then do that. But that's not what this movie is doing. I think that's an interesting point. But this movie is like doing all the things that you would do if you were trying to say that life is pointless, but then trying to like also pull it together at the end a little bit, be like, well, it's important to talk to your daughter or something.
Yeah. Well, and there's just like other things that like they I don't think they could quite figure out how fast and how strong and how smart the alphas were, because like there are times where like there'd be like one alpha running at them down a hallway, and they're like like these people who are supposedly trained unloading machine guns, and like a single alpha is like dodging and weaving and whatnot. And then like later
They're
on
just
in the
jumping
movie,
back and forth.
yeah, and then later on in the movie, the daughter, who has no training whatsoever, kills like 10 of them, like easily. And then like there's certain points where like Batista, who's like, he's Batista, he has, issues fighting them, hand to hand. But then other times, like he's just like throws one, shoots the other, or dodges over a table. He picks up a poker table and chucks it and takes out like 5 of them. Like it's really inconsistent.
Those things weigh so much. How did he throw it across a room?
Those things are probably bolted to the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, he like throws.
This is kind of this like inconsistency is along the same lines of the military guys at the beginning, who are just like the worst military guys. Like the crash happens and the main guy radios to the base and he's like, something, there's a crash, there's a bunch of fatalities. And the woman on the other end is like, how's the payload? Is it, is it intact? And he's like, nah, the door's open. And she's like, you need to run right now. Get out of there. Get everybody. Leave. If anybody's down, leave them. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go check this thing out really quick. Like, what? First of all, why do they have the worst soldiers in the world transporting this ridiculously, like, it's like a nuke. It's worse than a nuke. Why do they have the worst soldiers transporting it? And also, even the worst soldiers would obey a direct order like that.
Right.
It's just like a thing that wouldn't happen.
On the off chance this happens, how do you not have like a fail safe? So
Yeah.
like, how do you not
I
have
kept
like
on thinking that they were going to nuke the site from orbit,
right, or shoot him
right then.
Why do you not have like a bomb like injected into this thing's neck? So like if this happens, you just hit a button and it blows its head off or something.
Or
Anything.
a stronger container.
Right. Anything. Like how, and like that's the thing that's insane. Like
Somebody sneezed on the door and it opened.
Yeah, these aren't even like, just little Humvees. Like they have like full on, 18-wheeler military vehicles, and just like a regular sedan like flips this truck.
A Cutlass Supreme.
Yeah, it's fucking dumb. But yeah, there's just like really inconsistent with these.
Speaking of the opening credits, we're never going to get through the movie this way. Speaking of the opening credits, why did Drax stab his wife in the head instead of shooting her?
Because he was home. I don't think he had a gun, but he had a knife.
I'm pretty sure there was a gun in his hand and he dropped it so that he could stab her.
Yeah, that's another thing with like, maybe like kind of to your point, like women, like they don't explain themselves kind of thing, because there's two different points and it's like back to back where like Drax has a conversation with his daughter and he's like, I understand you hate me because I killed your mom. She's like, no, it's because you killed my mom and then never talked to me again. And then like right after, his girl, like the second in command, is like, the only reason I'm here is because I want to fuck you. And he's like, you still want to fuck me? I had no idea. Why don't women ever tell me anything?
Both of those things are Drax's fault.
Yeah.
And it's painted as the woman's. This movie just feels,
that's fair.
All of Zack Snyder's movies feel like the subtext is, wouldn't life be easier if women weren't around?
Oh man. Yeah, you're making a point now, and I'm starting to see it.
It pisses me off that Sean Spicer was in this movie. By the way.
Me too.
I'm just going to start going through my notes.
Yeah, I don't think we need to really get into this. And I think my note was Sean Spicer, and then they also mentioned like they're going to nuke the city on the 4th of July because the president thinks it's cool.
I thought that was funny.
I thought it was funny. I think the implication is that Trump is supposed to be president when this movie is going.
Sure, but they should not have hired Sean Spicer.
Oh, I agree.
Don't hire him. Don't give him
any more exposure. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
And also like Snyder, from what I can tell from this movie, is fairly liberal leaning.
Yeah.
To the left, and is making fun of a lot of these people. But then he's literally putting money in Sean Spicer's pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, did you catch the Snyder cut reels in the vault?
Yeah, I did see that.
I thought that was funny.
God, it's just...
So the coyote chick, Lily, is I
have issues with that, too.
She's just Kristen Stewart light, right?
Yeah, so the thing about the coyote, just really briefly, is like, there's a point where in the...
I don't know that I love calling a white woman coyote either.
Right, me neither. But like when we get to the quarantine zone and... Drax's daughter is going to help them get into the city with the coyote. Like she's basically hooks them up with the coyote to get them into the city. And then she at the last minute is like, "Hey, security guard, like I need you one more person." So we find out like nobody knows this, but until they go in, she's like, "Oh, by the way, like these zombies are fucking smart as shit. This isn't a prison. This is their kingdom, and we need to give them a sacrifice." So she like sacrifices this guard, and she's like, "I've totally seen you rape people before, so I'm going to sacrifice you."
Should have led with that.
Right.
Because Drax could have just shot her.
Yeah. So yeah, she doesn't. Yeah, she shoots him so that way like he can't get away from the zombies. But it's like, and this comes up. People ask her like, "Do you do this every time?" She's like, "Yeah." She just hangs around that camp. Like clearly she has to like why do the guards at this camp just let her hang around when like people just keep going missing and when she's around? Like it's like it doesn't make any sense that the military lets her stay.
All right, can I just rapid fire you some
rapid
questions?
Fire some.
So Garrett Dillahunt, his whole mission was to get the head, right?
He just needed a vial of blood, but he chose to get the head.
Right. And well, I think Tanaka wanted him to get the head, but he told the coyote that he wanted a vial.
Well, no, she asked him and he goes, "Well, I think this is cooler and it's probably worth more." Like he even said that he could have just used the blood, but it's cooler.
My real question is, he's there with the one woman who knows how to get in and out of the gate or whatever, right?
Right.
And they are 50 feet away from the gate. Why didn't they just leave with the head?
I don't know. I don't think they were that far away from the gate because they were
right
close.
Where they were when they
and that's the
city.
thing that I couldn't figure out because they made a big point at the beginning, and there are a few things I want to bring up that I thought were interesting that didn't pay off, but they had to go through. She's like, they're letting us in, but like I'm not gonna like mess with them, and I'm not gonna overstay my welcome by walking on the streets. So we have to cut through this building, and then there's like a pretty gnarly scene in that building. But it's like, so it seemed like they were somewhere else, but you couldn't really tell because it was just like Well, it was just two big buildings and nothing but rumble, so it was really hard to get a sense of where everything was.
The Queen went down and played with the blood from earlier. Like they're in the same location as
that's right.
The entrance. Okay, so they had
to. That's weird.
They had to do the Indiana Jones thing where they had to set off a bunch of traps before they could get to the vault.
Yeah.
And the first one was a pressure plate.
Fun. I liked that scene.
I didn't, because all they had to do was set off a pressure plate. They could have just thrown a body on there, and then Vanderhoof went up and got a living zombie and walked it out, and then it was too interested in Dietrich or whatever his name was to do the thing.
That
Why
I
did they
agree,
just
that
throw
was
a
stupid.
body
They
on
could have
top?
just done that for the first one, but like it ended up making sense for the second and third trap. But
Sure,
I
but we
did think
didn't.
that
But
was
we
fun.
didn't know that at the time.
No.
And then also they microwaved a zombie hand because they learned that they were attracted to heat or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like the zombies that dried out outside would constantly be trying to eat each other in the heat, right?
Yeah, and that was one of the things I wanted to bring up. They made a big thing, like there was a bunch of zombies.
I have more.
Okay.
We asked why did we already did this one. How did Zeus get across town faster than a helicopter? I know he had a zombie horse, but there's a helicopter.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. Twice
He
that
went
happened.
down. He went down a building from one building to the other one, and then up the building again.
Yeah, made no sense.
How does the daughter, Sweet Bitter, find her friend in the hotel? Have you ever been to a casino hotel?
They're huge.
They're big.
Yeah, she had to go floor by floor.
I have
no
to
way she
assume
didn't have time.
I have to assume there's one or two other humans in there also, and other zombies.
Well, and they made a point saying like all the zombies came because
all the alphas did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you would think that there might be some regular.
I refuse to believe that there's not a zombie in there.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't. The guard was there.
We talked about this, but what was the daughter's plan? How did she think that with minutes to spare, she was going to find her friend, get back downstairs, get over to the helicopter, and get out of town?
While she knows the alphas are out. Because she hid in a car and watched them like stampede to the...
I'm not asking about the alphas though, like just what...
No, I'm just saying...
How does she think that that's going to...
Right, but I'm just saying it's further complicated. If, no matter what, she wouldn't be able to do that. But she also knows these smart like she knows about the alphas at this point. She literally saw, hundreds or 1,000, however many alphas there are, stampede across the way. So it's not like she could get back into the original casino because the alphas are there, let alone the regular zombies.
Right, to get to the helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How did Vanderhoof survive the blast in the vault? I have to imagine... I'm willing to believe that the vault is strong enough to withstand a nuclear blast underground. Like I'll let that go.
I had no problem with that part.
But wouldn't the heat just cook that dude?
No, I think it would be fair to say that between, layers and layers of concrete and the vault itself, and I'm sure, it being a state-of-the-art one, that there's some like oxygen supply because they turn on the generator. I'm willing to buy that. What I don't buy is him walking through radioactive wasteland afterwards.
Yeah, and I think there's two things happening there. I think that they made a point of saying it's a low-yield nuclear bomb, but
it's still a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, we don't know what that means. I have to assume that he's still walking through fallout.
The blast still went miles outside of the city.
Yeah, and also he, I guess he's been bitten by the zombie at that point, so maybe he's surviving because he's got the zombie infection going.
Maybe.
But then, how long does it take to turn into a fucking zombie, dude?
And
everybody else turned real quick.
Well, we only ever saw one other person get bitten in turn.
Sure, the army guy at the beginning.
Yeah, so we saw them at the beginning.
That's my point though. He turned within
and then you had
Theo Rossi.
And you had Drax the Destroyer. But the thing is, that's a thing in almost every zombie movie, a cliche, where somebody is able to hide it for a period of time. Like it doesn't affect everybody. And like with any, if we assume it's a virus, let's just assume it's a virus. He
walked so far, bro.
I agree, it's stupid, but like that part is a zombie movie cliche. Somebody who gets bitten and it takes days to turn. So that one is like the least of my worries of the inconsistencies and the things that don't make sense in this movie. But it's stupid.
But still,
and he makes it on a
We
plane.
can agree that walking through the fallout is ridiculous.
That makes no goddamn sense at all.
And then also like he gets onto the plane and he sees that he's been bit, and then it's like cut to credits.
Yeah.
But in my mind, his next thought is like, I'm gonna shoot myself because he definitely has a gun.
Right.
Problem solved. Or, hey, I know I'm gonna turn into a zombie. I'm either gonna crash this plane or you're gonna open the door so I can jump out.
Yeah.
Make a decision.
Something.
But like, I feel like it would be very easy to kill yourself within moments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair too. So just a few, I'm going to rapid fire some of my notes. So I already talked about the coyote, why the fuck is she allowed to hang around? There's a few things that drove me crazy. So almost the entire movie or trailer was at the beginning of the movie, and it's shit that didn't actually happen or matter to the plot. So like the Zombieland opening intro where we see all the funny deaths, like none of that mattered. And there's a point where they do like the heist, what they do in every heist movie. Here's the plan, and they break down the plan of what they're gonna do. And then it's interjected with people asking questions. And that was like the money shot of the trailer of them like in a line outside of like the casino, just like killing a swarm of zombies. And that never happened. Like it's interjected with the comic relief, Dieter, who's like, I've never killed a zombie. What do I do? And then they're like, oh, you just bashed it in the head. So it's like the coolest shit in the trailer never fucking happened in the movie. Yeah. And then just like all the weird shit that comes up. So they tease robots. And nobody even mentions it. None of it, like, a few people you see like blue goo and a metal face. And then there's like a weird zombie baby with blue veins. But like none of our characters saw that. Like, wouldn't that have made more sense for like the woman that they rescued, the daughter rescued, to have seen that and tell people like, hey, by the way, they can have babies and they have blue goo.
These characters don't talk to each other.
Right. But like she didn't see that. That would have made a ton of sense for that woman to see it and tell people. And so that way, there's stakes to it. But yeah, the alien thing, there's a UFO they don't even acknowledge. You just see two flying lights in the sky.
So I have something to say about this, unless you want to rapid fire some more.
And then there's a time loop thing that's brought up. The same scene where you brought up with the traps, which I thought the traps were hilarious. And I laughed my ass off when like the last trap like smushed the zombie. Nobody else in the theater laughed at that, but I thought it was hilarious. But there's a point where they like look down and they see zombies, or not zombies, but bodies, and they're wearing the exact same clothes. And they have they have the same necklace, and they make the Vanderhoof guy was like, oh yeah, this is a time loop. Like the blueprints we saw in the lobby, because they find like a set of blueprints in a bag. They're like, oh, we're not the first crew that they sent in here to try to do this. And so they bring up this time loop thing, and then like, once again, no payoff, anything. Like it's not referenced. It makes no sense.
I'm willing to let that one slide. Like I'm less worried about that. I think that that's a little bit of artistic license where like, as the audience, we're seeing it through Vanderhoof's eyes. And I don't think that those people are literally wearing the same clothes. I think that's
it turns out they were. Zack Snyder had the set designer. They said it in an interview, like set designer and the costumer, like he did it on the day. Like that wasn't planned. He's just like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And then they rewrote that scene for him to bring up the time loop.
I know, but I'm saying, I think that that's like an impressionistic thing. I'm saying in the world of that movie, I know that they were literally wearing the same clothes, but I'm saying in the universe of the movie, I don't think they're actually wearing the same clothes. I think that's just Vanderhoof like having a little bit of fun with.
But when you have
the idea that Tanaka has sent other people in, no argument that it's not executed well.
It shouldn't have been in the
movie. I'm just saying that of all the things we're talking about, that bothers me less.
I don't know. I just thought it was just like, that's a pretty highbrow sci-fi thing to even bring up, and when you've already talked about robots and UFOs.
Well, they haven't talked about robots, but
right? Well, I mean, he outside of them, and that's the biggest thing. Like, how do you have all this shit and not have any of it pay off or explained?
So I have mixed feelings about some of this stuff, because the UFOs don't bother me at all. The time loop thing I think is dumb, but I can overlook it because I understand, or I feel like they're going for a joke that is just like whatever. The UFO thing actually doesn't bother me because it's not, there's no attention called to it, and they're at Area 51,
right?
And there's an implication that the zombies are related to UFOs. That feels like air quotes something we'll explore in a sequel,
right?
But it doesn't matter for now. Now, I think that's very different from the robot zombies. If you have robot zombies in a movie, we're talking about the robot zombies. Like I feel like you can't just throw that one out there.
Right. And there's just all these things that are thrown out, which I agree with you with the UFO and it being near Area 51. And like, they're very, very tongue in cheek, like, hey, what do you think it is? We did just come from Area 51. Like, it's fine. And I think you're right that, that kind of goes hand in hand, but it's just weird that they tease all these and not one thing. Like, I don't think for the first movie in a franchise that you can set up that much stuff and not have a single thing pay off or be explained.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that's similar to the UFOs that I wanted to bring up was the hibernating zombies. Like, there's something going on there. I mean, I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting.
I think it is interesting, but it never comes up. And the same thing with the dehydrated zombies. They're like, when it rains, there should have been rain and these things should have come back.
All right. So I have thoughts about this. I think the hibernating zombies is just like interesting window dressing for this movie that can also be talked about in a future movie. I think that the UFOs in the sky, interesting window dressing that can be talked about in the future movie. That stuff doesn't bother me. The robot zombies are very distracting and I think demand explanation, but they're clearly setting up a thing in the future. And there's stuff like, there's another section of this that's like the dried out zombies or Vanderhoe's motorized saw that feels like Chekhov's gun. That's like stuff that is set up in the first act that your brain is like, oh, I know how movies work. They're setting this up so that it's going to come back later. Later on, Vanderhoe is going to have this saw and he's going to go fucking ape on these people.
Nope.
Or, it's going to rain at some point in this movie and they're going to have to deal with 10 times as many zombies. And then it doesn't happen. And that's, yes, super disappointing. But those feel like other things. Like that feels like weird, incoherent, missed opportunities, Chekhov's gun things. The robot zombies feels like corporate. I mean, I know it's Zack Snyder's idea, but I think that's the part of his brain that's working. It's like, we're setting up for sequels. There's going to be some crazy shit and we need to find a way to shoehorn in, Black Panther or whatever other Avengers so that we can
with that
get the rest of the franchise going.
If one of the characters, whether it was, Scott Ward, Drax the Destroyer, if it was the YouTube guy, the daughter, anybody of them went like, what the fuck? That was a robot. It's like, just acknowledge it.
I think that and I mean, I don't know. I'm like writing off the top of my head, but like Sonata or Garrett Dillahunt just like having plans open for a robot zombie, or it's Tanaka. I just forgot his name. Tanaka,
the casino owner.
Yeah, the casino Bly.
Yeah.
If there's
Sonata.
a scene, there's one scene where
Tanaka,
he's talking. Yeah. There's one scene where he's talking to
the military,
which is another thing that's like brought up and not talked about really at all. I know that Garrett Dillahunt is like, this is for the military, but like I wanted another scene of the military talking to Tanaka, but they could have had plans open for a zombie,
like they did with like
an offhanded
Godzilla.
Just an offhanded reference,
right? And then the whole thing, like, I understand that like you need a hook to get the crew in, and so $250 million heist is a thing, and none of the crew actually knows how much money is there, and they're all content with getting 200,000, 100,000, whatever their cut is going to be. And I understand that there's a hook, but like, why can't you be slightly honest, quote unquote honest, with like Drax and be like, hey, look, like, we don't want this to happen again, and like the military wants, like, if you can get any blood for a cure, and like just at least have that, like anything.
Yeah,
like,
lie about it. Say that it's for a cure.
Right, anything. So this never happens again, kind of thing. But so it's just like they didn't need to have that much deception, and you didn't need to have the coyote and him go out on his own. So there's like all these little threads that could have been tidier.
And this is another thing that we're gonna get, hate mail from Zack Snyder fans, but I feel like this is why people think that Zack Snyder's deep, because he's got this like anti-government thing where he's like, the government needs zombie weapons or something, and people will react to that and they're like, oh, this is deep because he's talking about how corrupt the government is, totally overlooking that none of this makes any sense.
No, well, and it's just like, overall, this could have been a much simpler, streamlined movie. And when I came out of the theater, because I hit everything I needed to say, but like when I came out of the theater, I was like, that was certainly a movie that got made. Like, I went out of it thinking like, this is just a movie. I didn't think it was terrible. I didn't think it was good. I thought it had some fun moments. I thought it was worth watching. But over the last week since I've seen it and have seen, I've started talking about it to people who've seen it online, like, I have progressively, my opinion of this movie over the last week has gotten worse. Where like with Mortal Kombat, when I came out of that, I was like, that was okay. It had some fun moments. It was really bad, and I still think Mortal Kombat is a bad movie.
But it's a good time.
But it was a fun time, and the things that they teased some things, but everything they teased for future movies, there was a basic explanation of it at some point to tell us why we should be excited about this thing coming forward. This movie did the exact opposite. It teased so many things, but there was nothing explained enough to go, well, why do I care about this in a second movie? And that's where I think Mortal Kombat like has potential. And even though it wasn't a good movie or a perfect movie, it did enough right and got me enough will and gave me enough of an explanation to go, I get what this is. I get where it's going. And I understand why these people are doing what they're doing. Even if it doesn't make sense, like within the realm of that movie and that story, it makes sense as to what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah, and I think this is another Zack Snyder problem because like Batman vs Superman and Justice League have similar problems, right? Where they're just like, here are some things that are happening in the sequel, and you care about them now,
Yeah.
not like saying why, not concerned with why we might care about these things. Just like Martian the Manhunter's here. Don't ask any questions. He's cool and you like him. You know? Wonder
exactly
Woman
right.
is here and she has a dope soundtrack and you can see some of her ass. Come out to the next movie. Yeah, exactly. By the way, there's no way that the government lets the daughter keep any of that money that Drax gave her, right?
I mean, if they even know that she survives, or who knows?
I mean, I think she got picked up by a helicopter.
Oh, that's right. I mean, she didn't have that much money. I think they would probably be.
I mean, I think they're throwing her in fucking prison for.
She's going to Gitmo. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she's going to a fucking.
Oh, and the other
they're going to turn her
like,
into a zombie.
So she saves that person she went into the city to save, but
she doesn't
survive. Like we don't know. Well, and that's the other thing. Like.
No, she's dead.
Everybody, the helicopter crashes because they don't quite get out in time. So Tig Notaro dies. Everybody dies except for her. She's the sole survivor until we find out Vanderho survived in the safe.
I'm pretty sure that the woman that she went in to save didn't survive, but the movie actually doesn't even show us the thing. It's like, wasn't the whole last third of the movie, wasn't like the narrative push to save this woman?
Right.
And we don't even find out if she's dead.
Yeah. And
what was the point?
The one prop that I really want to give this movie, the one thing that I would say is pretty cool. So in that scene that you brought up with the hibernating zombies, where they're just like, hey, if you don't make too much noise, you don't shine the light in their face, like we should be able to like, army crawl through. I thought that was a bit much that, with all the gear that they'd be able to get through there without bumping a zombie, but whatever.
Oh yeah, that's stupid. Yeah.
But, they get through and then the YouTuber's friend, Chambers was like, she notices that the other dude, the corporate guy, is acting a little wonky, and so she's like, she can't like yell or shout, so she's like, dude, I'm watching you. So he moves a glow stick so that way she goes off the wrong path, and she kills like conservatively 40 zombies on her own, and I thought that was a really badass scene, and it was like unfortunate that she didn't make it.
Well, it was badass, but it was totally undercut by the next couple beats that happened. The next one is that Garrett Dillahunt locks the door so that she can't get out, basically killing her.
Yeah.
And she sees his face and he's like, I got you, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then she crashes through a window and is seemingly doing kind of okay, but none of the rest of the team goes to get her. And then she survives for another minute or so. And at no point does she say, that guy killed me, don't trust him.
Right.
Why wouldn't she say that?
Like, she should have at a point, because like you had like the mercy kill where the YouTuber dude sees her and he's like, he nods and then like he shoots the gas tank she's holding and blows up. But she should have been like, dude, you're right, like, hey, he locked me in. But like that action, I think that was the best.
Kill me in literally 5 seconds, but before you kill me, know that guy's bad and he's gonna kill you.
Right. And
go ahead and kill me now.
And so she was a badass, and like I think the two most badass people in this movie were the YouTubers. Like, so she has that badass scene, and then at the end when they're like trying to like leave with the money and get to the helicopter, that guy, the YouTuber guy, kills just as many zombies as Drax, and then he sacrifices himself with a bunch of grenades and makes it where Drax can get away and go save his daughter and get to the helicopter with Tig Notaro. So it's like, dude, the two best characters were like the least experienced, least trained people, and they were like the most heroic ones. They
must have been Vero users.
But yeah, I mean, that's all I have for this movie. It's.
I think the last thing that I want to say is, like 2/3 of the way through this movie, I noticed that the pattern of scenes was that there'd be like a crazy cool action scene, and then people having these like soap opera level cliche dramatic moments where like the action just stops and they're like, listen, I got to talk to you about our dynamic, our relationship. And then choices that are explained like 5 minutes later. All these people, like at multiple points in the movie, someone does something that doesn't make any sense. And I literally like was rewinding the movie to figure out why someone did something. And then 5 minutes later, they'd be like, oh, I had to go get this person, or I had to cut this thing's head off, or whatever.
Super weird.
And it just like kept on happening. And it wasn't suspenseful or interesting. It was just confusing.
Yeah, and the thing is like about this, there was no real, with the exception of Drax, there was no real character development or arcs in this film that really mattered. Like nobody really.
I don't think he had any character development either.
I mean, he was
the same guy.
He needs to communicate with people, and that's really it. But no, you're right. And then you have nobody really changes for good or bad in this movie.
His character development was 30 minutes of therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. But like the other thing is just one more thing with the inconsistency of zombies. They can use elevators, but they can't open doors. They can ride horses, and they can figure out like trade with this coyote, but they can't open doors, and they can't like.
Even velociraptors can open doors.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, this movie's just there's a lot of like ideas and a lot of swings, but I just don't think anything truly connects in this movie.
Yeah, I've seen people talking about like if Zack Snyder needs a producer to reel him in, or maybe you said that earlier.
I did say that. I thought like George Lucas, he just hasn't found the right producer that can work with him, because like the first three Star Wars movies.
Zack Snyder is one of the top 5 directors in the world, in the world right now. There's that moment has passed. No one's reeling him in at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that would have helped before. I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is. I think this is what we have.
I was excited about this movie when I heard about it. I feel like there's
better ways to spend $100 million.
Yeah, like when I heard about this movie, a year or two ago, I was excited because I like Dawn of the Dead a lot. The 2005 or 2004 remake. I like that movie a lot, and I like 300, and I like
big action movies. I like big, stupid action movies.
I liked Man of Steel. I liked all of Zack Snyder's movies pre-Batman v Superman. And so I was excited for him to get back to it. And then I saw the trailer, and I was not like impressed by either of the trailers for this film. But I still am like, I'm going to give it the benefit of doubt. I like zombie movies, and the more I think about this movie, the less I like it. And I kind of wish it didn't happen.
Yeah, and like I'm in the bag for this shit. Like, I defend, the Marvel movies to indie filmmakers who think that everything should cost less than $15 million or whatever. And I don't disagree with that either, but like, I like having tentpole movies. I like mainstream movies that do weird shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't like it when they end up completely sucking.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like you said, there's a better way to spend $100 million, and I absolutely agree. Like you need, especially for one that wasn't going to theaters. Like this is a streaming movie. It's not going to lead to more money to make those indie films. Like that's the thing, like the argument, like Disney can spend all this money on the Marvel movies because that Marvel money allows them to fund through their other studios the more artsy films. And so there is a place for your tentpoles. There's a place for your independent films. And it's just,
meanwhile, Netflix is canceling fucking Glow.
Yeah. And then
all of their good shows.
Yeah. And then they make this and Jupiter's Legacy.
Ugh, Jupiter's fucking Legacy. Oh, we didn't talk about the Eternals trailer.
Yeah, I thought I was very underwhelmed by the Eternals trailer.
I feel like I had one more point about Army of the Dead.
Tig Notaro, great. Glad they got rid of Chris D'Elia and put her.
I'm very glad they got rid of Chris D'Elia, but I don't think Tig was that great.
Oh, I didn't think she was great in it, but I'm glad they put her in it.
I think you literally just said that you thought that she was great.
I like her. I don't think her acting was good, but it's like she did the best she could considering she acted by herself in literally everything. She didn't meet any of the actors. She still hasn't met Batista, apparently.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
I forgot what I was going to say about Army of the Dead, but
I was trying to guess.
We've said enough. Eternals, I was underwhelmed.
Yeah.
I think I'm in the bag for it because I'll go see whatever Marvel.
I'm going to see it, and I think a second trailer will do a lot more, but like the Eternals, even for comic book fans, are not a huge draw.
I was trying to temper my reaction a little bit because I think this is like a teaser trailer. And it's really not meant to have a lot of story in it.
Yeah.
But it still just kind of felt like, okay, they've always been here, huh?
Well, it was kind of like in the Snyder cut where it's like after each time he got a mother box, he went and talked to that dude and he's just like, hey, I went and got a mother box and this is how I did it. This is how I'm going to get the next one. It was kind of like this, seeing the same scene over and over. You just saw the Eternals like watching people like every 100 to 200 years, just like watching people like hang out.
Yeah. Zack Snyder movies kind of feel like video games, huh? Like they have like cut scenes that have like really bad acting and dialogue.
Yep.
And then like you get to do some cool shit. But then there's another cutscene.
Batista decided not to do Suicide Squad with James Gunn.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting when Suicide Squad comes out because I feel like there's a lot of comparable elements to this, right?
I think so.
It's a group of mercenaries going in and doing a job and blah, blah, blah. I think it's got a similar sense of humor. And James Gunn also worked on Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And I think what I was talking about initially, like my main beef with Zack Snyder in this movie is that it seems like there's that article just came out that says that Man of Steel has no heart. And I think that's true of all Zack Snyder movies. I think he doesn't care about telling an emotionally resonant story. He just cares about doing cool shit that makes you go, oh, wow. And I think that James Gunn does that equally as well, but also tells very emotionally resonant stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm really looking forward to the Suicide Squad. I actually, funny enough, I like the Green Band trailer more than the Red Band trailer, but I'm really excited about the Suicide Squad movie. So. But yeah, that's all I've got. If you wanna give us your plugs, and then we'll wrap this bitch up.
Yeah, baby. I'm on Instagrams at Dysalexic, DYSAlexIC. I'm on the tweeters at Polishi, just my last name, PULISCI. And I'm also on Letterboxd at Polishi. You can check out all the movies that I'm watching as they happen.
Excellent. So you guys can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You guys can support the show at patreon.com/MDXpods if you want to, chip in a buck, help us pay for our web hosting and movie rentals and whatnot. You get all this content early, and you also get bonus episodes periodically. If you want to track what I've been following, or if you want to track what I've been watching, I'm also on Letterboxd now. I just got on this in the last week, but I'm MDX Mike. And I've been doing my best for the last week to track everything I'm watching in there and, giving little notes as to what I thought about it. But it's fun. I'm actually really enjoying just Letterboxd. I don't have any followers yet except for Alex because I haven't even tried to get any. But it's a
great
fun.
app.
Yeah.
Letterboxd. Endorse us.
Yeah. And it's fun because you just keep track. It makes it really easy to keep track of what you've been watching and whatnot and categorize it. So, yeah, I don't know why it took so long to get on it, but I'm having fun just checking things off. Yeah.
I feel like people are regularly asking me what I've been watching and I can never remember anything. And then I got Letterboxd and now I always know.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thanks for listening, and don't watch these movies.
Watch Land of the Dead.
If you want.
Or don't.
Whatever. Okay. Bye.